so close because we share the same values, we have the same goals. And today we are making our partnership even stronger with new landmark agreements. The first one is on trade. We are concluding today the negotiations of our free trade agreement, and I really want to thank Minister Damien O'Connor and Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis for an outstanding work. Tough negotiations, but they made it. We're done. So I think this is a historic moment in our cooperation. We can be very proud of what we have achieved after 4 years of negotiations. It is a solid and it is a modern trade agreement. It brings major opportunities to our companies, our farmers, our consumers, and important on both sides. The European Union is already New Zealand's third biggest trade partner, and with this agreement we should be able to increase trade between the two of us by 30%. That's a big step. Our farmers on both sides will benefit, and they will benefit way beyond tariff cuts, because we will work together on sustainable food systems. We will work together on animal welfare, on food and fertilizers, on the reduction of pesticides, many, many good topics. This agreement also protects 200 European agri-food products, the so-called famous geographical indications. EU investment in New Zealand can grow by 80%, and this is huge. And this is because we managed to ensure a level playing field between EU investors and New Zealand, and vice versa, New Zealand investors and the European Union. We also managed to eliminate almost all tariffs on EU exports to New Zealand and to improve access to our respective government procurement markets. The agreement brings modern rules on digital trade, very important. So it facilitates the data flow between us. This is important, but it protects the individual rights, so protecting our values. It is a big step for our economies and for the development of digital rules internationally. But beyond economic benefits, this agreement has very important innovations to bring just and green growth. It hits several firsts. For example, it includes sanctionable commitments to the Paris Climate Agreement. This is the very first time that we take such commitments in a trade deal, the very first time. And it contains, again, for the first time, provisions on fossil fuels. This clearly reflects our common goal of reducing fossil fuel subsidies and reforming fossil fuel subsidies, in particular through the WTO. And we show the same ambition on core international labor standards and on gender equality to advance women's economic empowerment. So this agreement will bring major benefits to our economies, but also to our societies. The second agreement we signed today is on law enforcement cooperation. We just witnessed the signature of this agreement for closer cooperation between Europol and New Zealand. This will strengthen significantly our joint fight against organized crime and terrorism. Indeed, both New Zealand and the European Union have suffered heinous terror attacks in recent years in Churchville, in Brussels, in Nice. This agreement will reinforce our cooperation to help us prevent such attacks. It will also address terrorist content online, and it will guarantee high standards of data protection. So, dear Jacinda, these agreements come at the right time. The world needs now very clear signals that democracies like ours deliver for people, because the values we share are challenged across the world. From Ukraine to the Indo-Pacific region, you're well aware of that. Indeed, Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine is sending shockwaves across the world. It is driving food and energy prices up. It is endangering prospects for global growth and the lives and livelihoods of millions. It threatens the rules-based order. So the democracies need to stand up and stick together. And this is why the European Union is working to strengthen its partnership with like-minded partners. And dear Jacinda, of course, you are such a like-minded partner. The agreements that we conclude today are good for New Zealand, they are good for the European Union, they are also good for the global economy as a whole and for our citizens. And they show that democracies are united and that they are strong. Once again, a very warm welcome.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, President von der Leyen. Thank you for the welcome, and thank you for the conversation that we've just shared as well. And tēnā koutou katoa. Today is an important day for New Zealand and the European Union, including its 27 member states. This afternoon is part of a constructive, wide-ranging and warm discussion between two good friends. I'm delighted that New Zealand and the European Commission can announce that we have concluded negotiations of a high-quality, inclusive, free trade agreement. This is a positive outcome both for New Zealand and for the EU. Our relationship with the EU is characterised by our shared values. As the President has said, we are principled, driven democracies committed to working together to build a more sustainable future and to support the international rules-based system. And we've embedded some of the important principles that underpin these values into this agreement. It is in our minds a model of how we can create trade arrangements that support our economies, but also support people and place. It's what we in New Zealand call trade for all. This free trade agreement has been some 14 years in the making. The concept of an FTA was floated more than a decade ago, and it has been 4 years since we started negotiating. Our talks over the last 2.5 years have had the additional complication, of course, of COVID travel constraints. But despite many challenges, we got there. And today we deliver an agreement that represents improved trade opportunities for our exporters. For small and large businesses alike, the agreement will deliver real-world commercial benefits at a time when our economies are recovering from COVID and grappling with the economic impacts and instability of war. It contains groundbreaking commitments, as has been said by the President, on environment, labour rights, gender equality, as foundational parts of a trade and sustainable development chapter. And I'm pleased that this FTA also includes a dedicated chapter on Māori trade and economic cooperation, which of course is very important to Aotearoa New Zealand. If I were to tell you the story of this FTA in numbers, it would read like this. It provides duty-free access for 97% of New Zealand's current exports to the EU, 91% of those from day one. It grows the value of New Zealand exports to the EU by a forecast 1.8 billion New Zealand dollars per year by 2035. And it provides enhanced access for New Zealand's world-class services exporters into the EU market of around 450 million people. And then there's what it represents for our individual exporters. Kiwi fruit is finally able to come into Europe tariff-free. Previously, it was hit with 8% tariffs and was forced to compete with other producers who had none. Onions, honey, wine all have eliminated tariffs. And for dairy, they finally have conditions that will make it viable for them to trade into this important market. Ultimately, this agreement creates new opportunities. It cuts costs and red tape for our exporters in a hugely important market and makes bold further steps for sustainability. And while this is an incredibly important day for our trade relationship, it's also a time to acknowledge the extraordinary time and challenges that Europe is facing. New Zealand and the European Union are united in our response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We stand shoulder to shoulder with the European Union in condemning Russia's unprovoked and unjustified war of aggression against Ukraine. And we reaffirm today our unwavering support for Ukraine's independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity. We also emphasise the importance of international efforts to ensure legal accountability, including for war crimes and crimes against humanity, with New Zealand planning to intervene on the International Criminal Justice case. Additionally, we spoke about the close coordination between New Zealand and the EU on the adoption of unprecedented sanctions against Russia and Belarus. We confirmed our commitment to address together with like-minded partners Russia's disinformation as well as the global consequences of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, including food insecurity. And of course, I share the President's enthusiasm for the fact that we have been able to also today sign the Europol agreement, which in these times is incredibly important that we have those information sharing arrangements that also continue to underpin the values that we have around privacy protections that you would expect between two like-minded countries, but enable us to further continue our fight against international organised crime and, of course, as you've indicated, the effects of terrorism. In closing, and going back to the free trade agreement, because that is what today will be remembered for, the FTA conclusion marks a long-awaited and historic further milestone in the strong partnership between two closely connected, like-minded friends. I'm very pleased to be here as part of this historic moment and to see what this free trade agreement offers us as partners in the future. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's wrap our stuff. My dear. Yes. Let's give you a hug. Very good. Thanks a lot. That was great. Thank you.